Hello, Assalamualaikum to Madam Sharifah Fatia and to my fellow friends. Today we will be presenting about Petronas Gas Berhad. We are from Group 3 and our members are me, I'm myself Abu Jalal bin Kamel, Adib bin Muhammad Zulfaka, Nur Izzati binti Kamaruddin, Zuhaibah binti Abdul Rahman and Zuhaira binti Abdul Rahman. So as for the introduction, Petronas Gas Berhad, known as PGB, was founded in 1983 as a wholly owned subsidiary of Petronas. PGB went to public on the Bursa Malaysia main market on September 4, 1995. Petronas owns 60.66% of the company with balance share held by the institutional investor and regular investor. Petronas Gas Berhad vision is to be a leading gas infrastructure and utilise company. As for their mission is to be a world-class business entity and to optimize the gas value chain in ensuring to maximize the returns for their own stakeholder. Their main business segments are gas processing, gas transportation, utilities, and regasification. This is their financial highlight, which is for quarter one of 2020, quarter two of 2020, quarter three of 2020, and final year of 2020, which is uh, quarter four. I will pass it to the next presenter.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Zuhaibah binti Abdul Rahman. Today I will continue to explain the liquidity ratio for Petronas Gas Berhad. Firstly is a current ratio. The formula for current ratio is a current asset divided with current liabilities. For 2019, current ratio 4,600,000 3,810 divided with 754,451. The current ratio for 2019 is 6.10 times, while for 2020, current ratio 3,270,223 divided with 700,000, 8,611. The current ratio for 2020 is a 4.61 times. The current ratio for Petronas Gas Berhad in 2019 is 6.10 ringgit in a current asset for every 1 ringgit of a current liability, and for 2020 the Petronas Gas Berhad has 4 ringgit 61 cents in current asset for every 1 ringgit of a current liability. It shows that during 2020 Petronas Gas Berhad slightly lower than in 2019. If you look at the comparison for these 2 years, the current ratios is still more than 1. So Petronas Gas Berhad still have ability to pay its areas of a debt incurred. Secondly is a quick ratio. The formula for quick ratio is current asset minus with inventory and divide with current liability. For 2019, the quick ratio is 4,600,000 3,810 minus with 56,895 divide with 754,451, and the quick ratio for 2019 is 6.03 times, while for 2020 the quick ratio is 3,200,000 70,223 minus with 40,840 divide with 700,000 8,611, and the quick ratio for 2020 is 4.56 times. Based on the calculation of quick ratio for Petronas Gas Berhad, it shows that for 2019, the company has 6 ringgit 3 cent in quick asset for every 1 ringgit of current debt, and for 2020, the company has 4 ringgit 56 cents quick asset for every 1 ringgit of a current debt. It shows that during 2019, the Petronas Gas Berhad has a higher quick ratio rather than 2020. 3 is a cash ratio. The formula for cash ratio is a cash divided with current liability. For 2019, the cash ratio is 3,500,000 32,758 divided with 754,451, and the cash ratio for 2019 is 4.68. While for 2020, the cash ratio is 2,600,000 26,718 divided with 700,000 8,611, and the cash ratio for 2020 is 3.71. In 2019, the Petronas gas Berhad as 4.68 times to cover all current liabilities without having to sell or liquidate other assets, while for 2020, the Petronas gas Berhad has 3.71 times to cover all current liability without having to sell or liquidate other assets. The result shows that during 2020, the cash ratio lower rather than 2019. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Zuhaira binti Abdurrahman. I would like to continue the presentation with profitability ratios. Firstly, for gross profit margin, gross profit divide with sales time with 100. For 2019, 1,700,000 78,393 divide with 4,200,000 22,693 times with 100, we will get 42.12%. And for year 2020, 1,900,000 44,779 divide with 4,100,000 93,578 times with 100, we will get 46.38%. The Petronas gas Berhad has 42.12% in 2019 compared to 46.36% in 2020. It means, based the ratio, ability of the firm to control cost of goods sold to its revenue are 42.12% and 46.38%. It shows that the gross profit margin has increased in 2020 than 2019 by approximately 4.26%. Secondly is operating profit margin. Operating profit divide with sales time with 100. For 2019, 2,055,362 divide with 4,200,000 22,693 times with 100, we will get 48.67%. For 2020, 2,200,000 45,659 divide with 4,100,000 93,578 times with 100, we will get 53.55%. In 2019, productivity was 48.67% of asset in return for creditors and shareholders, compared to 53.55% in 2020. Based on the calculation made above, Petronas Gas Berhad operating profit margin has shown an increase in 2020 compared to 2019 with a difference of 4.88%. Thirdly is net profit margin. Net income divided with sales times with 100. For 2019, 1,500,000 73,498 divide with 4,200,000 22,693 times with 100, we will get 37.26%. For 2020, 1,700,000 34,441 divide with 4,100,000 93,578 times with 100, we will get 41.36%. Petronas Gas Berhad generates 37.26% profits after tax in 2019, and it increased in 2020 by having 41.36% profit after tax. It shows that 2020 is more profitable for Petronas Gas Berhad than 2019 after all expenses including interest and taxes have been taken into account.
Next, I will continue to present the leverage ratio. Firstly, debt ratio. You can see here that for 2019, 23.51% of Petronas Gas Berhad assets are financed by debt, compared to 2020, only 14.67% of Petronas Gas Berhad assets are financed by debt. This means that Petronas Gas Berhad has the best debt ratio in 2020 because for debt ratio, the lower the number of the percentage is the best for the organization. So for debt ratio, 2020 is good for Petronas Gas Berhad. Next, number two, debt to equity ratio. For 2019, 30.73% of Petronas Gas Berhad debt used compare with total equity, and compared to 2020, only 17.19% of Petronas Gas Berhad debt used compare with total equity. Debt to equity also required that the lowest the number of the percentage is the best, is the good for the organization. So here we can see that 2020 is the best year for Petronas Gas Berhad of having their debt to equity ratio. Last but not least, number three, time interest earn ratio. For 2019, the Petronas Gas Berhad has 41 times of EBIT, uh, earning before interest tax to cover its interest. For 2020, the Petronas Gas Berhad has 51 times of EBIT to cover its interest. This is different with the other before, the two before, because for time interest and ratio, the higher the number is the good, is the best for the organization. So here we can see that 2020 also having the best year for Petronas Gas Berhad due to they have the highest number, which is 51 times compared to 41 times of 2019. That's all from me. I will pass it to the next presenter. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Adi bin Muhammad Zulfaka, and I will explain on the efficiency ratio. So efficiency ratio assess a company capacity to effectively use its assets and manage its liability in the present or short term. Inventory turnover ratio, asset turnover ratio, and receivable turnover ratio are examples of efficiency ratio. This ratio assesses a company capacity to manage its assets and how well it uses its asset to produce revenue. So for the first, I will explain on the inventory turnover. So for the inventory turnover formula is the cost of goods sold divided by the inventory. So the inventory turnover ratio will assess a company capacity to effectively manage its inventory and offers information about its sales. Over the course of a period, the ratio calculates on how many times the whole average inventory has been sold. So in 2019, the company able to use 42.96 times of its inventory to generate sales, and in 2020 it has slightly increased to the 55.06 times for the company to generate its sales using its inventory. Next, I will explain on the average collection period. So in the terms of account receivable, the average collection period is the time it takes for a business to obtain payment owing by its customer account receivable. The average collection period is used by business to ensure that they have enough cash on hand to meet their financial obligation. The average collection period is a key metric for firms that rely heavily on the receivable for cash flow. So for Petronas Gas Berhad in 2019, it took them 82 days to collect its account receivable from the creditor, but in 2020 they have performed better where they only take 52 days to collect its account receivable from its creditor. Next, I will explain on the total asset turnover. So the ratio of total sales or revenue to average assets is known as asset turnover. This indicator is invested in determine on how efficiently business use their assets to create revenue. The asset turnover ratio is used by investors to compare companies in the same sector or group. Large asset sales as well as considerable asset purchased in a given year can have an impact on a company asset turnover ratio. So the formula for total asset turnover formula is sales divided by total assets. So in 2019, the Petronas only has 0.26 times of effectiveness in using all its assets, while in 2020 they have performed better where they're able to get 0.31 times of effectiveness in using all its assets. Next, I will explain on the receivable turnover. So, receivable turnover is a metric that measures how quickly a company collects on credit sales. This refers to sales when the cash payment was postponed until after sales. So, to get the receivable turnover formula, we need to have sales credit sales divided by account receivable. So, to get the credit sales, we need to have sales minus with cash in the company. So in 2019, the company only able have 4.42 times in the receivable turnover, and it has performed better in 2020 where it has 9.96 times in the year 2020. So the last one is fixed asset turnover. So the fixed asset turnover ratio measure how well a corporation generates revenue from its existing fixed asset. A greater ratio will indicate that management is making better use of its fixed asset. So the formula for fixed asset turnover formula is sales divided by fixed asset. So in 2019, the Petronas Gas Berhad able to have 0.55 times to generate its income from the utilization of its plant and equipment, while in 2020 they have slightly decreased where they only have 0.53 to generate its income from the utilization of its plant and equipment. That is all from me. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nur Izzati Binti Kamardin and I will continue the presentation on market ratio. What is market ratio? Market ratio is the ratio measure investors' perception and judgment towards the firm's growth potential. There are 5 types of market ratio, which are earning per share, dividend per share, dividend payout ratio, price earning ratio, and also dividend yield. So firstly, earning per share. By referring to the calculation above, we can conclude that the earning per share in the year 2020, which is Rm 0.88 of Petronas Gas Berhad, is higher than in the year 2019, which is Rm 0.80. This means that Petronas Gas Berhad has higher earnings and strong financial position in 2020 compared to the year 2019. Next, dividend per share. By referring to the calculations, we can see that Petronas Gas Berhad has higher dividend per share in 2020, which is Rm 1 ringgit and 32 cent, than in 2019, which is Rm 0.72 cent. This means that the Petronas Gas Berhad may have strong financial because it able to stand with the current market conditions. The increases in the dividend per share will gain more trust from the investor to invest more towards the Petronas Gas Berhad. Thirdly, dividend payout ratio. We can conclude that the Petronas Gas Berhad pay out a smaller percentage of its earnings to shareholders as dividends in 2019, which is 90% compared to 2020, which is 150%. This allowed the Petronas Gas Berhad to be more sustainable payout ratio in 2019 compared to 2020. The last ratio in market ratio is dividend yield. By referring to the calculations, we can conclude that the dividend yield for Petronas Gas Berhad in 2020 is 7.77%, while in 2019 is 4.24%. This means that the dividend yield has increased in year 2020 compared to the year 2019. As a conclusion, market ratios in Petronas Gas Berhad can be improved by utilizing share buybacks and also reinvesting in the company. Petronas Gas Berhad can utilize share buybacks in order to raise the earning per share and enhance its cost efficiencies. Other than that, Petronas Gas Berhad can also reinvesting in the company to reduce the company's dividend payout ratio and in improving the dividend yield percentage.
In conclusion, financial statement analysis is an important business activity because a company's financial statement provide useful information about its economic position and level of profitability. The main position of Petronas Gas Berhad is revealed in this financial analysis, which take into consideration the company's financial statement for 2019 and 2020. Some suggestions have also been given as a measure for Petronas Gas Berhad to be consistent in continuing their best management and even encourage for the company to stand out more so as to generate greater net profit. This is future reinforce that the company's debt management in a very low ratio. In addition, the calculation of profitability is also seen to increase in 2020 compared to 2019. Thus, financial statement analysis may be considered as a vital activity for management to comprehend the quantity of cash collection and disbursement in business functions. That's all from our group. Thank you.